Morning, friends. We are on Chapter 4, the Bluecaps. Throughout the grinding of our souls and the gears of the great nighttime institution, when our souls are pulverized and our flesh hangs down in tatters like a beggar's rags, we suffer too much and are too immersed in our own pain to rivet with penetrating and far-seeing gaze those pale night executioners who torture us. A surfeit of inner grief floods our eyes. Otherwise, what historians of our torturers we would be! For it is certain they will never describe themselves as they actually are. But alas, every former prisoner remembers his own interrogation in detail, how they squeezed him, and what foulness they squeezed out of him, but often he does not even remember their names, let alone think about them as human beings. So it is with me. I can recall much more, and much more that's interesting, about any one of my cellmates than I can about Captain of State Security Yezipov, with whom I spent no little time face to face, the two of us alone in his office. There is one thing, however, which remains with us all as an accurate, generalized recollection: foul rot, a space totally infected with putrefaction. And even when decades later we are long past fits of anger or outrage, in our own quieted hearts we retain this firm impression of low, malicious, impious, and possibly muddled people. There is an interesting story about Alexander II, the Tsar surrounded by revolutionaries, who were to make 7 attempts on his life. He once visited the house of preliminary detention of Spalernia, the uncle of the big house, where he ordered them to lock him up in solitary confinement, cell number 227. He stayed in it for more than an hour, attempting thereby to sense the state of mind of those he had imprisoned there. One cannot but admit that for a monarch this was evidence of moral aspiration, to feel the need and make the effort to take a spiritual view of the matter. But it is impossible to picture any of our interrogators, right up to Abakumov in Beria, wanting to slip into a prisoner's skin even for 1 hour, or feel compelled to sit and meditate in solitary confinement. Their branch of service does not require them to be educated people of broad culture and broad views, and they are not. Their branch of service does not require them to think logically, and they do not. Their branch of service requires only that they carry out orders exactly and be impervious to suffering, and that is what they do and what they are. We who have passed through their hands feel suffocated when we think of that legion, which is stripped bare of universal human ideals. Although others might not be aware of it, it was clear to the interrogators at least that the cases were fabricated. Except at staff conferences, they could not seriously say to one another or to themselves that they were exposing criminals. Nonetheless, they kept right on producing depositions page after page to make sure that we rotted. So the essence of it all turns out to be the credo of the Blatny, the underworld of Russian thieves. You today, me tomorrow. They understood that the cases were fabricated, yet they kept on working year after year. How could they? Either they forced themselves not to think, and this in itself means the ruin of a human being, and simply accepted that this was the way it had to be, and that the person who gave them their orders was always right. But didn't the Nazis too, it comes to mind, argue that same way? Or else it was a matter of the progressive doctrine, the granite ideology. An interrogator in awful Orotukon, sent there to the Kolmia in 1938 as a penalty assignment, was so touched when M. Lurie, former director of the Krivoy Rog Industrial Complex, readily agreed to sign an indictment which meant a second camp term, that he used the time they had thus saved to say, "You think we get any satisfaction from using persuasion? We have to do what the party demands of us. You are an old party member. Tell me, what would you do in my place?" Apparently, Lurie nearly agreed with him. And it may have been the fact that he had already been thinking in some such terms that led him to sign so readily. It is, after all, a convincing argument. But most often it was merely a matter of cynicism. The Bluecaps understood the workings of the meat grinder and loved it. In the Zida camps in 1944, interrogator Myronenko said to the condemned Babish, with pride in his faultless logic, "Interrogation and trials are merely judicial corroboration. They cannot alter your fate, which was previously decided. If it is necessary to shoot you, then you will be shot, even if you are altogether innocent. If it is necessary to acquit you, and no matter how guilty you are, you will be cleared and acquitted. Kushnaryev, chief of the First Investigation Department of the West Kazakhstan Provincial State Security Administration, laid it on the line in just that way to Adolf Civilko. After all, we're not going to let you out if you're a Leningrader, in other words, a Communist Party member with seniority. Just give us a person and we'll create the case. That was what many of them said jokingly, and it was their slogan. What we think of as torture, they think of as good work. The wife of the interrogator, Nikolai Brabyshenko, the Volga Canal Project, said touchingly to his neighbors, "Kolya is a very good worker." One of them didn't confess for a long time, and they gave him to Kolya. Kolya talked with him for one night, and he confessed. What prompted them all to slip into harness and pursue so zealously, not truth, but totals of the processed and condemned? Because it was the most comfortable for them not to be different from the others. And because these totals meant an easy life, supplementary pay, awards and decorations, promotions and rank, and the expansions and prosperity of the organs themselves. If they ran up high totals, they could loaf when they felt like it, or do poor work, or go out and enjoy themselves at night. And that is just what they did. Low totals led to their being kicked out and to the loss of their feed bag. For Stalin could never be convinced that in any district or city or military unit he might suddenly cease to have enemies. That was why they felt no mercy, but instead an explosion of resentment and rage toward those maliciously stubborn prisoners who opposed being fitted into the totals, who would not capitulate to sleeplessness or to the punishment cell or hunger. By refusing to confess, they menaced the interrogator's personal standing. It was as though they wanted to bring him down. In such circumstances, all measures were justified. If it's to be war, then war it shall be. We'll ram the tube down your throat, swallow that salt water. Excluded by the nature of their work and by deliberate choice from the higher sphere of human existence, the servitors of the Blue Institution lived in their lower sphere with all the greater intensity and avidity. And there they were, possessed and directed by the two strongest instincts of the lower sphere, other than hunger and sex, greed for power and greed for gain. Particularly for power. In recent decades it has turned out to be more important than money. Power is a poison well known for thousands of years. If only no one were ever to acquire material power over others. But to the human being who has faith in some force that holds dominion over all of us, and who is therefore conscious of his own limitations, power is not necessarily fatal. For those, however, who are unaware of any higher sphere, it is a deadly poison. For them there is no antidote. Remember what Tolstoy said about power. Ivan Ilyich had accepted an official position which gave him authority to destroy any person he wanted to. All without exception were in his hands, and anyone, even the most important, could be brought before him as an accused. And that is just where our blue boys are. There's nothing to add to the description. The consciousness of this power and the possibilities of using it mercifully, so Tolstoy qualifies the situation. But this does not in any way apply to our boys, constituted to Ivan Ilyich, the chief interest and attraction of the service. But attraction is not the right word, it is intoxication. After all, it is intoxicating. You are still young, still, shall we say, parenthetically, a sniveling youth. Only a little while ago your parents were deeply concerned about you and didn't know where to turn to launch you in life. You were such a fool that you didn't even want to study, but you got through 3 years of that school, and then how you took off and flew, how your situation changed, how your gestures changed, your glance, the turn of your head. The learned council of the Scientific Institute is in session. You enter and everyone notices you and trembles. You don't take the chairman's chair. Those headaches are for the rector to take on. You sit off to one side, but everyone understands that you are head man there. You are the special department, and you can sit there for just 5 minutes and then leave. You have that advantage over the professors. You can be called away by more important business. But later on, when you're considering their decision, you will raise your eyebrows, or, better still, purse your lips and say to the rector, "You can't do that. There are special considerations involved. That's all, and it won't be done." Or else you are an ossipist, a state security representative in the army, a smersh man, and a mere lieutenant. But the portly old colonel, the commander of the unit, stands up when you enter the room and tries to flatter you, to play up to you. He doesn't even have a drink with his chief of staff without inviting you to join them. The fact that you have only two tiny you have only two tiny stars on your shoulder boards doesn't mean a thing. It is even amusing. After all, your stars have a very different weight and are measured on a totally different scale from those of ordinary officers. On special assignments, you are sometimes even authorized to wear major's insignia, for example, which is a sort of incognito, a convention. You have a power over all the people in that military unit or factory or district incomparably greater than that of the military commander, or factory director, or a secretary of the district Communist Party. These men control people's military or official duties, wages, reputations, but you control people's freedom. And no one dares speak about you at meetings, and no one will ever dare write about you in the newspaper. Not only something bad, but anything good, they don't dare. Your name, like that of a jealously guarded deity, cannot even be mentioned. You are there, everyone feels your presence. And it's as though you didn't exist. From the moment you don that heavenly blue service cap, you stand higher than the publicly acknowledged power. No one dares check up on what you do, but no one is exempt from you checking up on him. And therefore, in dealing with ordinary so-called citizens, who for you are mere blocks of wood, it is altogether appropriate for you to wear an ambiguous and deeply thoughtful expression. For of course, you are the one, and no one else, who knows about the special considerations, and therefore you are always right. There is just one thing you must never forget. You, too, would have been just such a poor block of wood if you had not had the luck to become one of the little links in the organs, that flexible, unitary organism, inhabiting a nation as a tapeworm inhabits a human body. Everything is yours now. Everything is for you. Just be true to the organs. They will always stand up for you. They will help you swallow up anyone who bothers you. They will help move every obstacle from your path, but be true to the organs. Do everything they order you to. They will do the thinking for you in respect to your functions, too. Today you serve in a special unit. Tomorrow you will sit in an interrogator's armchair. And then perhaps you will travel to Lake Seliger as a folklorist, partly, it may be, to get your nerves straightened out. And next, you may be sent from a city where you are too well known to the opposite end of the country as plenipotentiary in charge of church affairs. Or perhaps you will become executive secretary of the Union of Soviet Writers. Be surprised at nothing. People's true appointments and true ranks are known only to the organs. The rest is merely play acting. Some honored artist or other, or hero of socialist agriculture is here today, and tomorrow, poof, he's gone. The duties of an interrogator require work, of course. You have to come in during the day, at night, sit for hours and hours, but not split your skull over proof. Let the prisoner's head ache over that. And you don't have to worry whether the prisoner is guilty or not, but simply do what the organs require, and everything will be all right. It will be up to you to make the interrogation periods pass as pleasurably as possible, and not to get overly fatigued. And it would be nice to get some good out of it, at least to amuse yourself. You've been sitting a long time, and all of a sudden a new method of persuasion occurs to you. Eureka! So you call up your friends on the phone, and you go round to the other officers and tell them about it. What a laugh! Who shall we try it on, boys? It's really pretty monotonous to keep doing the same thing all the time. Those trembling hands, those imploring eyes, that cowardly submissiveness. They are really a bore. If you could just get one of them to resist. I love strong opponents. It's such fun to break their backs, said the Leningrad interrogator Shitov to G.G. And if your opponent is so strong that he refuses to give in, all your methods have failed, and you're in a rage, then don't control your fury. It's tremendously satisfying, that outburst. Let your anger have its way. Don't set any bounds to it. Don't hold yourself back. That's when interrogators spit in the open mouth of the accused, and they shove his face into a full suspidor. That's the state of mind in which they drag priests around by their long hair, or urinate in a kneeling prisoner's face. After such a storm of fury, you feel yourself a real honest-to-God man. Or else you are interrogating a foreigner's girlfriend, so you curse her out, and then you say, "Come on now, does an American have a special kind of blank? Is that it? Weren't there enough Russian ones for you?" And all of a sudden you get an idea. Maybe she learned something from those foreigners. Here's a chance not to be missed, like an assignment abroad. And so you begin to interrogate her energetically. How? What positions? More, in detail, every scrap of information. You can use the information yourself. And you can tell the other boys, too. The girl is blushing all over and in tears. It doesn't have anything to do with the case, she protests. Yes, it does. Speak up. That's power for you. She gives you the full details. If you want, she'll draw a picture for you. If you want, she'll demonstrate with her body. She has no way out. In your hands you hold the punishment cell and her prison term. And if you ask for a stenographer to take down the questions and answers, and they send in a pretty one, you can shove your paw down into her bosom right in front of the boy being interrogated. He's not a human being after all, and there is no reason to feel shy in his presence. In fact, there's no reason for you to feel shy with anyone, and if you like the broads, and who doesn't, you'd be a fool not to make use of your position. Some will be drawn to you because of your power, and others will give in out of fear. So you've met a girl somewhere, and she's caught your eye? She'll belong to you. Never fear, she can't get away. Someone else's wife has caught your eye. She'll be yours too, because after all, there's no problem about removing the husband. No, indeed. To know what it meant to be a Bluecap, one had to experience it. Anything you saw was yours. Any apartment you looked at was yours. Any woman was yours. Any enemy was struck from your path. The earth beneath your feet was yours. The heaven above you was yours. It was, after all, like your cap, sky blue. Have a good day, friends.